When it comes to deer hunting calibers, some of you might not think of straight wall cartridges. That is changing and changing fast. This is Deer and Deer Hunting TV. You know, you don't have to be a gun guy to appreciate the history of firearms in America, especially when it comes to deer hunting. Let's take the straight wall cartridge, for example. It was developed in 1876 just as an all-purpose round. And then in 1893, Marlin started loading it in their famous lever action guns in the 38-55. When you think about that 38-55 straight wall cartridge, it's a 38 caliber, but back then driven by 55 grains of black powder. Guys love that gun, and if you look back at those old-time deer photos from the turn of the century, sagging buck poles, a lot of those guys had those rifles, and they learned how to shoot those guns very effectively in the deer woods. So fast forward to today, Seth from Hornady is going to explain how they've taken the straight wall and made it a modern cartridge for deer hunters everywhere.
I'm Seth Swerzik with Hornady Manufacturing, and I'm the Marketing Communications Manager. I'm here today to talk about straight wall rifle cartridges as they pertain to deer hunting. Years ago, straight wall cartridges were very popular for lever action style firearms and are still popular today. You look at cartridges like the 45-70, for example. Well, within the last few years, we saw a really big resurgence of straight wall cartridges, primarily led by the 450 Bushmaster. Now, there's a lot of states to the east where you have limitations on what cartridges you can shoot. A lot of them now have straight wall limitations. Well, with modern times and modern firearms should come modern cartridges, and the 450 Bushmaster is one of those. So you have a 45 caliber bullet out of a 20-inch barrel going 2,200 feet per second. So for moderate and close range deer hunting, you can't ask for a whole lot more. These things absolutely hit like a hammer, and they were designed for compact firearms. When we helped design the 450 Bushmaster cartridge, it was designed for AR platforms with 20-inch or shorter barrels. And now there is a huge market for bolt action 450 Bushmasters. Now the reason for that is they are efficient, they're relatively economical to build, and they're accurate. So you have accuracy, you've got all the knockdown power you could want for deer hunting, and in states where you have straight wall restrictions, the 450 Bushmaster really thrives. So if you've been in a state that has traditionally been shotgun only, and now you have these new straight wall regulations that allow you to use the straight wall cartridge, some of the reasons you might jump over to use a straight wall cartridge would be accuracy, for one. You know, a really high quality rifled shotgun barrel might only produce groups that are 2 to 3 inches at 100 yards. Where if you get into a nice bolt action rifle with a modern designed straight wall cartridge, it is not out of line to expect minute of angle performance. So that's a big reason to jump over to a straight wall cartridge. Another would be velocity and range performance. You're going to get substantial muzzle velocity increases depending on your barrel length, and these bullets that are in like the 450 Bushmaster, for example, were purposefully designed to operate in that velocity window. So you might get some extended range performance past that 100, 150 yards that you might have traditionally saw with your shotgun. Another popular option for deer hunting is the classic shotgun slug.
A memorable hunt, but for me, a very memorable hunt with a slug gun.
Within the straight wall cartridge lineup, you have a couple headliners that are really leading the pack. And the first one is the 450 Bushmaster, designed by us in a roughly 2006-2007 time frame. It features heavy for caliber bullets that really perform well. From the factory ammunition offerings, you're looking at a 250 grain FTX or the 245 grain interlock found in the American Whitetail lineup. Now, our next most popular straight wall cartridge is the 350 Legend. The 350 Legend offers a substantial reduction in recoil when compared to the bigger 45 caliber options. In the 350 Legend, we have a 165 grain FTX bullet and also a 170 grain interlock bullet, perfect for those medium-sized game hunts at traditional ranges. Another popular option for deer hunting is the classic shotgun slug. If you've got a rifled shotgun barrel, nothing pairs better than the Hornady SST slugs. Now the bullet itself, the SST bullet, has a polymer tip that drives rearward into the bullet upon contact and forces that bullet to expand. Why that's important is with a shotgun, oftentimes you have a reduced velocity of around 1,800 feet per second or so, depending on the rifle and the load. Now that bullet will expand reliably, whether you hit a shoulder blade or if you come in on the soft tissue behind the shoulder blade, that bullet's going to expand uniformly every single time. Now, if you're looking for a little enhanced velocity, check out our Superformance line of shotgun slugs. These feature that same SST bullet, but with a highly progressive burning propellant that does not increase chamber pressure, but does increase velocity without increasing felt recoil. Great options for the shotgun slugs.
Going back in the archives a few years, here's one of my favorite hunts from Illinois. I'm hunting with Steve Bartilla, and as you probably know, Illinois for years was a shotgun-only state. It made it difficult for a gun hunter to target a mature buck because, let's face it, with a slug gun, I don't care if you're shooting a 12 gauge or a 20 gauge, you're pretty much limited to 100 yards. And so that's what we always sighted our guns in at, was 100 yards. And if you're familiar with the slugs of the past, let's say like a Foster style slug, you weren't going to get much more accuracy past 100 yards. Older style slugs, let's face it, you were all over the board. We were talking about a pie plate for accuracy then. But that was my first experience with a Hornady SST slug. And true to Steve's word, this buck comes out almost like clockwork, right to the corner of the field, right by the woods there. The bullet was right on target. You see him dip down below the edge of the field there. He crosses a creek and dies right there. A memorable hunt, but for me, a very memorable hunt with a slug gun. So now let's throw it over to Josh for an exciting gun hunt in Kentucky. This is one you do not want to miss.
I don't know what to say other than that worked.
And there was a hunt that I had during the Kentucky rifle season. It was just a prime example of where you can use vocalizations to your benefit. And this was kind of a rare example. It wasn't even your traditional example of grunting a deer in or rattling a deer in. This was just to get a shot opportunity at a deer that was laying down. I saw him out in the middle of a CRP field with a doe. She was obviously an estrus. They were a breeding pair. And I was like, how do I get this buck? How do I get him on the ground? Now, I could have shot him from where I first saw him. It was 250, 275 yards, but I didn't want to do that. I like getting close to deer. I like to be inside of 150 yards. Even with a rifle, I like to get inside of 100 yards because part of the fun for me as a deer hunter is getting close. I love to get close to deer, even if I am holding, you know, a rifle in my hands.
I think my only option is to get a cedar tree in between me and them and try to get to them that way. I think that's my only option. So I'm gonna try to get down here, get set up, maybe get a shot at him. He's a good deer. He's for sure a good deer. We're gonna see if we can't get up on him.
So I belly crawled to that stand, made it up into that stand, and then proceeded to watch this buck and this doe bedded down out in the CRP for several hours. All I could see was his head and his rack. I couldn't even see the doe most of the time. And so I was worried that I wasn't going to get a shot because they were staying bedded. By the time I got into position in the stand, they were just bedded and they weren't getting up. I had other deer that were coming through. I was running out of shooting light, running out of camera light. So eventually, I was like, hey, I'm gonna vocalize, see if I can get this deer to stand up.
That'll do. Dropped him. Well, I don't know what to say other than that worked. Oh man, I have so much respect for these animals. It has been a tough season. That deer I've worked for. First shell of the year, first shot of the year, first opportunity of the year, and we've only got a handful of gun season days left. But we got one right there, and he's a good one.
There he is. Looking back on that scenario, whitetail vocalization ended up being what allowed me to fill that deer tag and put that deer's meat in the freezer and on the griddle and that skull on the wall. At that point, when you're speaking deer and you're speaking whitetail, you can really elevate your odds of success whenever you have opportunities to use vocalizations to your advantage.
Wow, what a great Kentucky buck for Josh, and what a cool hunt. That's the thing about gun hunting. It allows you to experiment and try different things and different calibers. If you want to see the different types of calibers you can use that you might not even think about, check with your state and local regulations. I think you might be surprised. Very common question I get. I get it all the time, year after year. What type of broadhead should I be shooting if I'm shooting a high-speed crossbow? That changes my answer, because if I'm answering that question off of shooting my Matthews or a crossbow, like my 10-point, big difference here, because on a regular bow, it's all about preference and what you get used to. On crossbows, it's the same, but if you're shooting a high-speed crossbow, it changes. This one right here, 440 feet per second. I have to go with a broadhead that is going to be super accurate dynamically and aerodynamically. So on mine here, I use Sever broadheads. I know there's other styles out there. This crossbow here is my 10-point Havoc RS 440. It's 440 feet per second. One of the fastest crossbows out there. Can I throw any broadhead on here? No, I can't. I have to make sure that I have one that is aerodynamic and it's going to be accurate out to the longer distances I want to shoot. And for me, that's 50 yards. Maybe 60, probably not for me. For you, it might be. For me, what I've found, the Severs, the 1.75s, the new ones, I can shoot all the Severs out of my crossbows. These ones that are a little bit smaller diameter, they're not the big 2-inch cuts, I've used those. But if I'm shooting those longer distances, I'm gonna go for a little bit more streamlined approach. It's gonna assist in penetration big time. That's the key to those broadheads. And also it's gonna help with those flight characteristics. What about bolt choice? On some of these high-speed crossbows, they come with the shorter bolts. You can shoot the longer bolts in there, just be aware your speed is gonna be less. But again, like any other type of hunting, you have to practice, and you have to practice with what you're gonna be hunting with. So whatever you shoot, if you're picking a broadhead, make sure it's gonna be one that's aerodynamic, tight, mechanicals are perfectly fine, but you also gotta be very cognizant that thing's coming out of here very fast. And if you plan on shooting those longer distances, you have to keep that in mind. Hey, if you've hunted long enough, you've used a mock scrape, you've used a scent dripper, you might have even used a hemp rope. I know a lot of old school guys have done this. Wildlife Research Center has improved that idea with the new golden rope. Let's open this up and see what it's all about. So the kit comes with 3 ropes and enough scent to treat all of them. I'm only gonna do one today. I'm putting it over my camera. There's 2 ends to this rope that you need to be aware of. This end here is the part where you're gonna get the scent on. So what we're gonna do, that tape is up about 3.5 inches. I'm gonna unravel that rope. That's the part I'm gonna soak into the scent. And then the top end of the rope is sealed here. And then we're just gonna unravel that enough to get one of these zip ties through there so we can attach it to the tree. So I'm gonna actually prepare this right now. It's super easy. This is something you can do on the weekend when you're scouting. So before we go down there, I'm just gonna prep this quick. And what I'm actually gonna do, this saves me a lot of headache out in the field. I'm just gonna get that started. and that's through. So I can attach that to the tree and I'm ready to go. Then what you're gonna do is you're gonna unravel the bottom end of this rope. Again, these are natural fibers, and those natural fibers are really gonna soak up that scent. And then when you wanna come back and reapply the scent, you just dunk that into the pail. You can leave it in there and refresh that mock scrape as we go. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna soak this into the golden rope bucket, get it in there, maybe swirl it around a little bit. And what I'm actually gonna do is I'm just gonna tuck this in there. I don't care if it gets a little bit higher on the rope itself, so I don't get scent all over myself while I'm walking. Let's go down and hang it up. So what I like to do is hang these high enough so that scent is being dispersed. Now, you don't necessarily have to have this within reach of the deer. I just want it so the deer can smell it. And honestly, I want them to work licking branches. I have an oak tree here. This was a licking branch from last year that the deer had been using. I don't mind if they're using that. As long as they're coming in here, I know I can get this to be a hot scrape again. They might use this branch. They might use branches on the periphery, but I'm gonna get that up so that rope is hanging about chest high. Licking branch there. And then I just secure this tightly up to this branch here. Get that right around that limb. Really super strong zip ties too. Perfect. Right there, that's about chest high. I can bend that down a little bit. I'm not going to. I'm just gonna adjust this a little bit. Make sure you wash your hands afterwards if you get that on your skin, but it's as simple as that. The golden rope, gonna put these scrapes golden, especially when you start bow hunting.